Imagine going to your mailbox and seeing a letter there from someone you love, from someone who was a mentor and a great influence in your life for Christ. What would you do with a letter like that? Well, I'll tell you what I'd do. I would take it in the house and I would rip it open, looking for words of encouragement and affirmation from someone who had meant so much to me. You know, I think that's exactly what happened at the church in Galatia when they received a letter from their spiritual mentor, their father in the faith, the Apostle Paul. But when they opened that letter that he had written to them, they did not find affirmation really and encouragement so much as they found reproof. In fact, Paul called them out in Galatians chapter 3, and this is what he said. He said, "Oh, foolish Galatians. Oh, foolish Galatians, who has cast an evil spell on you?" And in verse 3 he says this, "How foolish can you be? After starting your Christian lives in the Spirit, why are you now trying to become perfect by your own human effort?" Can you imagine how they must have felt? What a blow that would have been to them. Well, today as we continue our series, You Might Be a Foolish Woman If, we are going to meet foolish woman number 8. And listen, she is the woman that Paul was talking about. And Galatians is the book that is written for you and me if we get caught up in the behavior and in the belief system of foolish woman number 8. And I want to tell you something. I've done that. This is the woman, this is the fool that appeals to me the most, okay? And whose bait I take far more often than I'd like to admit. Foolish woman number 8. Let me just define her for you. You might be foolish woman number 8 if you were saved by grace, but you're living by the law, okay? But you're living by legalism, okay? Legalism. It is that set of do's and don'ts that you and I so often set up for ourselves, trying and striving to receive God's pleasure and to become the woman that he wants us to be, and yet we've got our little list of do's and don'ts. We think, well, if I do this and this and this and this, then I'm a good Christian woman. But if I don't do this and this and this and this, then I'm a loser, okay, as a Christian. Girls, listen, legalism is an insidious thing. It is a dangerous thing. And what we see here in Galatians is that the Galatian people had fallen into legalism. You see, after Paul had left them, after he had delivered the good news, after they had become Christians and they'd been saved by faith through grace, okay? They had been saved through Christ alone. What had happened was Paul left, and then a group of men came in, of teachers came in. They were called the Judaizers, and they told the Galatian people, listen, Christ isn't enough. Christ isn't enough. No, you also need to keep the law. You need to keep this list of do's and don'ts. And so they were causing these new believers, and even we're going to see some mature believers, to fall prey to legalism and to a foolishness that God never wants you and I to fall into. Paul wrote this in Galatians 1:6. He says, "I am shocked that you are turning away so soon from God, who called you to himself through the loving mercy of Christ. You are following a different way that pretends to be the good news." And this is what happens with legalism. It pretends to be the good news. It pretends to be the right way, but it is so the wrong way. But the insidiousness, I think, of foolish woman number 8, and one of the most dangerous parts about her is this, is that when you begin to latch on to legalism, when you fall for this foolishness, listen, it is something that not only you'll fall for, but that you can lead others into. And the other thing is this: if you are a mature believer, you are just as prone to fall into this trap of legalism as anybody else is. In fact, even Peter and Barnabas, Paul calls them out in Galatians 2. Listen, he says this. He says, "But when Peter came to Antioch, I had to oppose him to his face, for what he did was very wrong. When he first arrived, he ate with the Gentile Christians, these new believers who were not circumcised. But afterwards, when some friends of James came, these men from Jerusalem, these Judaizers came, Peter would not eat with the Gentiles anymore. He was afraid of the criticism from these people who insisted on the necessity of circumcision and so many other things, of eating this food and not this food and all this. They wanted to take these people back into the legalism of living under the law. And as a result," he says this, and this is the result, it's what happens to you and me when we begin to adopt legalism and when others look to us as an example. It says, as a result, other Jewish Christians followed Peter's hypocrisy. Even Barnabas, he says, and that was one of Paul's dearest friends, was led astray by their hypocrisy. Girls, foolish woman number 8 can be you and can certainly be me. No matter how mature you may be in the faith, it is so easy to fall back into this foolish, false teaching that leads you to live according to a legalistic list of do's and don'ts. My friend Emily Ryan, who of course is a writer here on the Glow Girl blog, has written a fantastic book that we hope to release in the next couple of weeks. It's called Guilt-Free Quiet Times. I want to ask you a question. Can quiet times become very legalistic? Honey, you know they can. We feel like, well, if I didn't do this and this and this and spend this much time and do it at this certain time of the day, sometimes we can feel like a loser as a Christian. Girls, that's legalism. And Emily's book is called Guilt-Free Quiet Times, exposing the top 10 myths about your time with God. And those myths, you know what most of them are? They're legalism. I look forward to you getting this book. We're going to provide it for you free. So stay tuned to the Glow Girl blog and you'll be the very first ones to find out about it. Girls, legalism can invade so many different areas of our lives, even our quiet time. As a perfectionist, and I am one, listen, you know what happens to me? I disappoint myself on a daily basis. And as a perfectionist, I fall prey a lot of times to legalism because I want to do everything right. It is something that I have to be very cautious about. Maybe you do too. Has legalism, has trying to live according to a strict list of do's and don'ts, has it replaced the freedom that you felt and that you experienced when you first came to Christ? Listen, Galatians 5:1, Paul says this, it was for freedom that Christ set you free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery. Girl, don't be a foolish woman. Don't fall prey to foolish woman number 8 and the legalism that she will pour all over your life. You were saved by grace through faith. So keep standing firm, Paul says, and I say, in that grace and walking in his Spirit. And remember, it was for freedom that Christ set you free. If you can relate to anything I've said today, honey, you need to get the book of Galatians out today and you need to begin to read it. And you need to ask the Lord to restore that freedom and liberty to you that has been replaced by that foolish woman number 8, legalism. Next week here on the porch, we are going to conclude this series, You Might Be a Foolish Woman If, and we are going to talk about the only kind of foolish woman that you want to be and that I want to be. I'll see you then on Front Porch Friday. Bye, girl.